The world has enough wealth and resources to ensure that the entire human race enjoys a basic standard of living. Yet people in countries like Burundi, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic, the three poorest in the world, continue to live in desperate poverty. For other likely contenders for the undesirable title of poorest of the poor, like Afghanistan, Syria, and Lebanon, years of military, social, political turmoil make it impossible to attempt any assessment due to the lack of reliable economic figures. Located 400 kilometers off the coast of East Africa, Madagascar is the fourth largest island in the world. Known for its astonishing wildlife, the flourishing tourism industry has not been able to lift the country out of poverty. The majority of the population is still dependent upon agriculture for their livelihoods, leaving the country's economy especially vulnerable to weather-related disasters. Since becoming independent from France in 1960, Madagascar has experienced bouts of political instability, violent coups, and disputed elections. Madagascar could not escape the worst consequences of a war taking place over 7,000 kilometers away either. The collapse in grain deliveries from Ukraine and Russia has sent food prices skyrocketing, increasing the risk of famine in a country that already has one of the highest rates of childhood malnourishment and stunting in the world. Chad is the 10th largest oil reserve holder among African nations. It is also among the 10 poorest. The landlocked Sahelian country, once an agrarian economy, became an oil producer in 2003, but the sudden windfall brought wealth to a few and misery to many. One of Africa's smallest nations, in recent years Malawi has made strides in improving economic growth and implementing crucial structural reforms. Nevertheless, poverty is still widespread, and the nation's economy, largely dependent upon rain-fed crops, remains vulnerable to weather-related shocks. As a result, while living standards in urban areas are broadly improving, food insecurity in rural parts is extremely high. While a 15-year-long civil war ended in 1992, severe climate conditions, corruption, and political instability never went away. To make things worse, since 2017 attacks carried out by Islamic insurgent groups have plagued the gas-rich northern part of the country, up to 4,000 people were killed and another 800,000 displaced. When, in the summer of 2020, French company Total SA secured $15.8 billion in funding for a liquefied natural gas facility in the region, the biggest foreign direct investment in Africa ever, many hoped the project would mark the start of a new beginning. However, in April 2021, after repeated setbacks due to the escalation of violent attacks in the area, the company announced that it would suspend its operations indefinitely, depriving the country of much-needed income. Since then, the attacks only intensified and have spread to other areas. With 80% of its landlocked territory covered by the Sahara Desert and a rapidly growing population largely dependent upon small-scale agriculture, Niger is under threat from desertification and climate change. Food insecurity is high, as are disease and mortality rates, and the army's recurrent clashes with jihadist group and Islamic State, ISIS, affiliate Boko Haram have displaced thousands of people. One of the main drivers of the economy, the extraction of valuable natural resources such as gold and uranium, has also suffered from volatility and low commodity prices. Three decades of internal violence and conflict resulting in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people, frequent droughts and floods followed by famine and disease, lack of access to health services, massive levels of unemployment among especially young people, Somalis are growing hopeless. With 80 million hectares of arable land, over 1,000 minerals and valuable metals under its surface, and a citizen median age of just 17. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, the World Bank says, has the potential to become one of the richest African nations and a driver of growth for the entire continent, even just by virtue of being the world's largest producer of cobalt and Africa's leading source of copper, two metals essential in the production of electric vehicles. Endemic corruption, continued outbreaks of the Ebola virus, and the recent resurgence of the M23 anti-government insurgent group in the eastern part of the country continue to frustrate that incredible potential. The economy is also benefiting from the partially resumed sale of diamonds, which were found to be funding inter-religious armed groups and placed under an international embargo in 2013. Yet, the government has struggled to restore sales and has seen only a fraction of the revenues it once did, and roughly 70% of the population still live below the poverty line. The war in Ukraine has only brought more pain. The World Food Programme has already warned that due to the sharp increase in the price of staple products such as rice, wheat flour, and vegetable oil, the country is currently facing unprecedented levels of food insecurity. South Sudan is the newest nation in the world. It was born on July 9, 2011, 6 years after the agreement that ended the conflict with Sudan, Africa's longest-running civil war. However, violence has continued to ravage this landlocked state of roughly 11 million. Formed by the 10 southernmost territories of Sudan and home to around 60 indigenous ethnic groups, a new conflict broke out in 2013 when President Salva Kiir accused his former deputy, rebel leader Riek Machar, of staging a coup. As a result, it is estimated that as many as 400,000 people were killed in clashes and nearly 4 million have been internally displaced or fled to neighboring countries. The small landlocked country of Burundi, scarred by Hutu-Tutsi ethnic conflict and civil war, has the rather unenviable distinction of topping the world's poverty ranking. With about 90% of its nearly 12 million citizens relying on subsistence agriculture, and the overwhelming majority of them living in extreme poverty, food scarcity is a major concern. The level of food insecurity is almost twice as high as the average for sub-Saharan African countries. Furthermore, access to water and sanitation remains very low, and less than 5% of the population has electricity. All these problems, needless to say, have only been exacerbated by the pandemic and the war in Ukraine.